Any of you knows Luzli Matenge? Matenge? I cannot hear you. Okay.
Yes, I do. Okay. Maybe she will join as a participant. So maybe not as. She's actually from my office, and she's our governance leader. So she's not saying anything, but she's just. Is that okay? Or you would rather
Sure,
maybe they watch?
No problem at all. But I would like to mention her if so. Otherwise, if she's not going to intervene unless you need her to, and you can pass the. But it's important that she switches off the micro because we're hearing her talking. If you can.
Oh, okay.
All right. You don't have access to her. She's not close to you, is she?
No, but I'll let her know.
She's been silenced by my man. Okay, so we're ready. Welcome. I am Javier García de Viedma, the ambassador of Spain. I'm extremely honored to have all of you here, and I hope we enjoy a very nice exchange of opinions and dialogue between all of us on the occasion that we celebrated yesterday, which is the International Women's Day, as you know. It has been a sad day in a way because of COVID-19. Last year, at this date, we had prepared in the embassy a huge reception with women ministers and ambassadors, and I was very proud about what it was going to be, but unfortunately we had to cancel it, and this year it has been impossible. But I hope next year we will be able to have all of you together and see face to face. But anyway, this is what we have. And the first thing I would like to underline is that my country, Spain, is defending and it's promoting feminist foreign policy. In the next few days, we're making official the new strategy of external action, and it will be presented by our foreign minister. And I really invite you to follow in the social media, in our accounts, the accounts of the embassy and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because it's a very interesting approach. And I think that Spain in the next few years is going to have an important and detached role in multilateral organizations mainly, but in other fora too, on what the defense of women and policies of gender and women in conflict situation, women, peace and security, etc. In some of these areas, we already play an important role, but I think it is going to be upgraded. Now, International Women's Day is a great opportunity to celebrate the progress made and to take a stock of the challenges and the way ahead to achieve gender equality. So we have for this occasion a high level of panelists who I am sure will provide us with very interesting and good food for thought and key ideas for this 2021 year. Let me introduce all of our viewers, our three panelists. First, I would like to present you to Ms. Anna Mutavati. She is the Country Director of UN Women Kenya. And Ms. Mutavati is a human rights and social development expert with 20 years of progressive experience on leadership and management, human rights and gender equality programming, law development, as well as legal practice. Prior to her current post, Ms. Mutavati worked in Uganda and Zimbabwe with UN Women, UNFPA, and UNICEF, focusing on gender-based violence and female genital mutilation, among other issues. Ms. Mutavati, welcome, and thank you very much for being here with us today. Okay, our second panelist is Ms. Ireri, Director of FIDA Kenya. Ms. Ireri is a lawyer and an advocate of the High Court of Kenya with 15 years of post-admission experience. She worked as the national coordinator of 160 Girls Project. It is an UN award-winning strategy litigation project. Miss Ireri has a long international experience as she has worked with different regional organizations based in Ghana, Uganda, South Africa, and Mali. Ms. Ireri is a recipient of the prestigious United States Global Women Leaders International Program and was named in the top 40 under 40 women in 2019. Congratulations for her achievements in legal protection of vulnerable groups in Kenya. Welcome, Ms. Ireri, to this conversation. Now, our third panelist is Ms. Asha Ismail. She's a good friend of the embassy. She's a Kenyan Somali human rights activist who founded the NGO Girls Save a Generation, creating awareness about female genital mutilation, FGM, early marriage, and other types of violence against women since 2007. Her work and dedication convincing person by person saved and prevented many girls from female genital mutilation. With Save a Girl, Save a Generation, her goal was to continue saving generations and build a shelter for unprotected girls in Kenya. Because as she says, saving a girl means saving an entire generation. Señora Ismail, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros. Sea usted bienvenida. I'm saying this in Spanish because she speaks wonderful, wonderful Spanish. Okay, so now I think we can start the dialogue, and I would like first to address each one of you a specific question on your views on the specific subjects, and then we can open a larger debate if you like. I will just remind and please encourage you to talk for maximum or around 3 minutes so that we make it, easy for the people, our viewers and listeners. So the first question would be addressed to Ms. Mutavati of UN Women. Ms. Mutavati, you have a rich experience in international organizations in different African countries. Now, nowadays, and for the last few years, unfortunately, we hear and listen and read analysis that affirm that multilateralism is in crisis. How do you assess the importance of international organizations in the defense of women's rights?
Thank you very much for having me and for the question. So I would say that multilateral organizations still have their place in defending women's human rights, even though it is perceived to be under attack. I would say that international organizations and multilateral organizations do bring those global norms and standards that are set for achieving gender equality and empowerment of women. And with those global norms and standards, the role is then to say, how do we help the member states where we are serving so that they domesticate them and then they continue to aspire to achieving those global norms and standards. There is also a role that they play, that multilateralism plays in connecting the member states or the local communities where we are working with international best practice, so that we can aspire to see what is happening from other countries and learn from that and apply the reform. Last but not least, of course, is the friendship that comes with the development financing, because as we know, without the finances that are required to drive the gender equality agenda, progress will always be slow. It will not be achieved. So multilaterals come in with the partnerships, with the financing.
Can you hear? Okay.
Can I go on? I am just about to.
Hello, can you hear me? I think we have had a small connection issue.
Oh, okay. So can I go ahead? Perhaps, and can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. Okay, great. So I will just wind up then. So yes, there is
Pero somos
value.
nosotros, ¿no? ¿Tú las ves? Yo no. ¿Eh? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can't
we can hear you
I
loud
think
and
maybe
clear.
it's my
Yeah.
connection, which is.
Yes. It could be your connection, Your Excellency.
Can you
so
hear
I'll
me?
just
I
we
can't
can
see
hear
you. ¿O si me dejas el tuyo? Sí. Sí. Okay. It seems that I am experiencing a problem with I can see myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can see you and hear you
The
loud
only
and
problem is
clear.
that I couldn't see you. Sorry.
Oh.
I couldn't see you in my computer. Let's see if the connection comes back. I'm with my colleague's computer. Let me silence this. Okay, so that there is no return. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Mutavati. I'd like to ask Ms. Ireri, in that concern, working with the national-based and grassroots organization is also key. FIDA Kenya has provided legal assistance no less than to 3 million women since 1985. That's quite impressive. So how do you see the evolution of access to justice for women in Kenya? And has there been enough progress? Which steps would you consider that should be taken to step up women's access to justice?
Thank you very much. And on behalf of FIDA Kenya, thank you for having me. As you have rightfully pointed out, access to justice in Kenya remains a primary need, not only for women, but for majority of the population. In that regard, since 1985, FIDA has specialized its services to offer innovative access to justice products, which include having women accessing courts to represent themselves in simpler cases such as child custody, as well as providing lawyers through pro bono lawyer schemes and litigating in-house as FIDA to ensure that women are able to bridge the gap of access to justice and are able to have their cases heard in court. Over time, we want to laud the judiciary. There have been innovations that are aimed at enhancing access to justice costs, such as alternative dispute resolution. So where cases don't necessarily have to be litigated, we are having mediation, conciliation, and arbitration as alternatives. A lot more needs to be done. And in that regard, allow me to highlight three things. One is a need for continuous advocacy to the population, that they have a right to access justice, that the courts are there to serve them, and for us to have information and education to necessary standards that will enable the country and citizens to be able to access the courts. Secondly, as a country, we must be deliberate to talk about the prohibitive cost of access to justice. Courts still remain out of reach to majority of Kenyans, and especially now with COVID, where we are having innovations such as technology, we must be able to ensure that bundles or internet is accessible to all citizens for them to access e-courts. And thirdly, we must see political will, especially in legislation, to be able to reform the judicial process, especially where introductions such as mediation and arbitration have been fronted, so that Kenyans as a whole, and especially women, do not suffer because of missing out on justice. Thank you very much.
No te escuchamos.
That's my fault. My connection might not be very good, but this was my fault. Sorry. No, I was saying that thank you very much for your very interesting and very much to the point intervention. Yes, I think later through the conversation, we could probably deepen a bit more into that, because I hear that in many countries, the laws are good, but the problem is putting them into practice, making them really, really effective. Now, Ms. Ismail, from Save a Girl, Save a Generation, not all justice is provided by state courts. Social and cultural traditions can also be a source of justice or injustice. Your life is a story of struggle for justice within communities to end female genital mutilation. You have fought these practices since you were almost a child, working with young girls and with communities. Your organization, Save a Girl, Save a Generation, has a powerful name, which reminds me of the sentence, who saves a life saves the whole world, present in many religious texts. Now, working with community leaders can be a point of entrance to entire communities, and I am sure that tradition and religion play an important role on that. Could you please tell us about your organization's work with religious and community leaders on fighting FGM, please?
Gracias, Javier, and thank you very much. You will all forgive me if I mix Spanish and English. And since for the last 20 years, Spanish has been my language, and I'm trying to remember my English while I am here. Save a Girl, Save a Generation, as Javier already explained, was registered in 2007, it's a formal part of it. But as a personal level, I've been working more than 30 years on ending FGM in different countries that I've been living. Now, so we registered the organization in 2007 in Spain because of a need. There was a constant, let's say, women who are coming from and practicing communities who were living that time in Spain, and they were not, let's say, moving to another country. They were settling. There were families that were settling, having children. So we thought it was quite important to inform about this issue and to educate different sectors of the like the health department, the police, the social workers, the education, so that they can be able to address it adequately. Now, our work has really advanced in Spain, and the next move was to come back home to register the organization here in Kenya. We registered the organization 2019. I think we got the certificate in January 2020, but unfortunately, what has affected all of us, we couldn't do much in 2020. And so we came this year. And this year we have done a training of 20 ambassadors who are going to work, let's say, as ambassadors for Save a Girl, Save a Generation from 5 counties. We have had the 20 people from Wajir County, Garissa County, Tana River, Isiolo, and Nairobi County. Those are the 5 counties that we are allowed to work at the moment, since it's our first year. And we chose actually those counties because of the high number of cases of FGM and generally gender-based violence are very common in those counties. So the training was successful. We learned a lot. We learned a lot from those young and old people because we mixed both genders. They were both all ages. The youngest in the group was 20 years and the eldest and oldest was 60. And so it was a perfect combination where we also learned a lot, and they also learned from the process and of the training. So the idea was those 20 people to go to their villages back home. And we actually chose on purpose the group that came. There were no people who had previous information about FGM. They had never attended any conference. They have never attended any training. So it was quite important to know where the information reaches, how far does it go? And who are the people who benefit from all the trainings and seminars that are done? And it was very interesting for us. We are also going to start a home for girls. At first, we were going to do it with underage girls, but right now it's going to be with above 18, let's say, or dropouts of school, so that we can give them a second chance in life. That is our very next project. I'm quite happy to share this table with Anna Mutavati and of FIDA. I think you're doing great work, admirable, with a lot of years of experience. I think we can learn a lot from you, and we are ready to collaborate and in every aspect. Thank you. We can't hear you.
I disconnected so that I don't, no noises interrupt you, and then I forget to turn on the micro. Yes, FGM is a drama, and there's a very interesting thing that sometimes, even though public opinion, governments, laws forbid it, and everybody is against it. But still on the ground, especially in rural and remote areas, some people keep practicing it. But I think it's one of the goals should be to eradicate it completely, because it's really inhuman. Now, we've done this, this question so that you enter and explain to us and answer some questions. Now I'd like to open the debate on some hot issues, some present issues and future issues that I'm sure the audience would like to hear your views about them. Now, the first is, it couldn't be otherwise, pandemic, COVID-19. Every 8th of March is a good opportunity to take stock of the last year's progress on women's rights. The pandemic has put a huge burden in all of us, particularly to vulnerable communities. So this is a question for the three of you. You can answer maybe in the same order that we've started. Ms. Mutavati first, and Ms. Ireri, and then Ms. Ismail. How do you assess the impact of COVID, the pandemic, in women's rights, specifically in the fields of the work of your organization? It must be affecting you a lot. It must be, very, very tough, isn't it?
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Yes, thank you. Now I don't get the echo. So it is true that the COVID-19 pandemic has threatened most of the progress that we have made in achieving gender equality and empowerment of women. I can just think of 3 quick areas, and I'm sure my colleagues will also come in on the rest of them. So firstly is the issue of gender-based violence. We have experienced, so we do work on gender-based violence even pre-pandemic. But what we saw with the pandemic is the huge increase in cases of gender-based violence as more and more people stayed at home because of the restrictions and lockdown. So we saw more women spending more time at home with their husbands. So the home is supposed to be the place where one feels loved, cared for, protected. But then for some women, it became a place of terror and horror because, men perhaps would blame it on the stress, mental health, and the loss of job, loss of income, and not being able to go out and so on. So they would perpetrate so much abuse and violence on women. So we saw a sharp increase in cases of GBV. But let me add for our audience that so COVID-19 and the pandemic did not cause GBV. We have always had cases of GBV, but what it did is to expose the levels of violence that women actually experience on a day-to-day basis. And then we saw that going up exponentially. So that is one way that we saw a potential rollback in terms of the progress that we have already made in fighting GBV. Secondly, Your Excellency, and dear participants, is the entire issue of women's economic empowerment. We saw a total erosion of women's livelihoods, a total erosion of women's incomes and income capacities, because women occupy those low-paying jobs that are very, very insecure. So whenever a company is faced with a decision to cut, the ones that are affected the most are those that are in the lowest parts of the ladder. So we saw most of the incomes of women being eroded. And of course, this put so many women back in the line of poverty again, back in the bracket of poverty. So again, rolling back all the progress that we were making in terms of women's economic empowerment. The last issue is the issue of leadership. So what we've been always working for as UN Women is to promote and advance the participation of women in leadership. And we've been making slow but steady progress towards that. However, with the COVID-19, just a quick analysis of all the countries that had national task force for COVID-19, what we saw, we sampled 87 countries globally, and only 3.5% of those 87 countries had women on the national task force for COVID. So it's just again, put to shame what we've always been saying, that you cannot make decisions that affect men and women, and yet women are missing from those decision-making tables. So it's one of the key issues we want to highlight, and which is also linked to the theme of this year's International Women's Day, that women constitute half of the world's humanity, but in many places they are denied or they're excluded from decision-making. And in an issue like COVID-19, you cannot come up with sustainable solutions. You cannot come up with solutions that are going to impact on lives positively for prevention and for response if you are missing women on the decision-making table. So I will just highlight those and stop here and give my colleagues perhaps a chance also to say something. Offer back to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Ms. Mutavati. That is really something that is in the newspapers. It's tragic. The gender-based violence. This is one of our flagships in our foreign policy. Try to fight it. We organized a couple of years ago a very interesting seminar on gender-based violence with the help of the European Union. We brought some judges and prosecutors from Spain to talk about it. And the terrible thing about it is that it's not a matter of rich or poor. It's not a matter of black or white or whatever race. It's not a matter of any religion. It's not a matter of richer or poorer or more or less developed society. It happens everywhere, and that's one of the difficulties to eradicate it. But yes, as you said, it was there before. I mean, somebody who, a male who doesn't mistreat a female just for the case, just because of pandemic is not going to start doing so. So it is just a circumstance that aggravates the evil. Now, I'm sure FIDA, Ms. Ireri, has a lot of ground experience during the pandemic. So what is your assessment? How do you think is doing the pandemic is affecting your work?
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I'd like to pick it up from where Anna has left it. And to inform the public that yes, GBV is with us, and it is really a stark reality of what we have to deal with. FIDA Kenya rolled out a toll-free number on the 15th of April 2020 to respond to COVID. And to date, I can confirm that we are just slightly shy of 6,000 cases that have been reported to us, largely which are gender-based violence. And so for us, two things were exposed by the pandemic, over and above what Anna has stated. And one is the level of preparedness of our institutions, largely government, to handle gender-based violence. So we see, for instance, over time, FIDA, alongside other institutions, have been clamoring for the resourcing of shelters or halfway homes where women, children, and men who need security as we pursue access to justice can be catered for. This is a discussion that was started with the devolution of governments. We have engaged a number of county governments, especially around resourcing and setting aside property that can be part of PPPs, public-private partnerships, where we can together join hands, resource and fund and sustain a number of these shelters. So really, this has been exposed by the pandemic, and we'll still call upon the governments at both levels to seriously think about the protection of vulnerable groups. The second thing, Your Excellency, as you ask, is the level of the institutional preparedness in terms of access to justice. So when the courts went virtual, institutions such as the National Police Service and the National Prison Service also needed to transit. What FIDA did is, as a result, one, we did open virtual justice centers within our 3 offices in Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu, where women who need to access the courts virtually would walk in and be able to access the courts, would prepare them how to engage with the courts, present their cases, and have a level of business continuity or service delivery, because everyone then was moving towards technology and we did not want them to be left out. However, we also observed that, especially within correctional facilities, there was need for us to equip the prisons so that the plea taking, which is a fundamental part of access to justice, or the mentions that would be happening now that prisoners or women in custody were not being transported to the courts, would still be able to access justice. And as a result, I can confirm working with at least 4 prisons, that's Thika Women's Prison, Langata Women's Prisons, Kisii Women's Prison, and Nyeri prisons, where we have equipped the prisons with laptops, with internet connectivity, with printers, and all this is to ensure this continuity. The other fundamental chain within the criminal justice system, are the National Police Service. Because at the end of the day, for us to have a successful conviction, we need all these players within the criminal justice system. So we engaged in dialogue with the National Police Service and identified a number of police stations which also needed technology equipping through laptops and through printers. Why do I emphasize this? Because at the end of the day, solutions around COVID have to be that pragmatic. As Anna has mentioned, if we look at economic empowerment, we had women calling FIDA through the toll-free number or coming to us and telling us they have no food to share with their families at the end of the day. Loss of income, loss of livelihoods, the economic status in Kenya is really in a dire situation. So we needed practical, pragmatic solutions that could not wait. And as a result, we saw that was bearing fruit in terms of ensuring families are not overly exposed to the vulnerability around COVID, but then that there's still protection within the country. A last thing, Your Excellency, just to point out, is that the last question that we need to address as a country is the overarching need to address mental health. Mental health issues remain fundamental within COVID-19. The head of state has alluded to it as part of the cause of gender-based violence. So we need to see resourcing and dialogue and discussions at community level to stop the stigma around mental health and have well-structured intersectional discussions to address mental health across our communities. Thank you very much.
Wow, that was very impressive. And let me tell you, the conclusions of the seminar I mentioned before were very, very much on the line. I think you mentioned practically all of them, and there was no COVID by then. So this is extremely important. Sometimes we make the laws and we think that the laws solve all the problems. We put it in a paper and then it's solved. Then you need resources, you need political will, you need change culture. Change the culture of the police, the judges. It takes time. It does take time. I remember when they started to talk about this problem in Spain, many people, and I myself, I admit it, I don't deny it. I thought, this is too much. It can't be so serious. Then you realize how deeply rooted the problem is and how terrible it is. And then you start to realize that you were the one who were wrong. And it takes time, of course, to solve. You don't change a society in a minute. It's also a matter of economic progress, of change of mentality, of education. It affects all domains of life. But as I said before, there are many super developed countries and societies, and there is still gender-based violence. And this is a thing to study and to try to understand why, if that is possible. Now, thank you very much. So, Ms. Ismail, Your turn. How is COVID affecting you and your work and you think the general situation of women?
Well, thank you first to Anna and Anne. I think it was impressive all they are doing, and I agree with them totally in all that is supposed to be done. Gender-based violence did not start obviously with COVID, as Anne said. But let's say COVID became a very good cover for this to go on because of the economical situation, the fear of what is going to happen. I will give you an example of where we were in Spain, the first lockdown. The first lockdown that was sometimes mid-March, April. We were quite unaware of what was going to happen, so we were all indoors and couldn't go out. There were reported a lot of cases of domestic violence then, see? And so we can see, and to be enclosed maybe in a space with a partner who was always and violent with you could increment, you know? In the case of Kenya, we noticed and we read in the media also and talking to the communities, the number of FGM increased during COVID period because the schools were closed, and the early marriage also, the number of early marriage increased, rape cases all away. It's like when we always talk about education is the key to education is the key to empowerment, is the key to progress. We always talk about that. It's not a lie. This has been proved during this time where the schools, college, universities, and all were closed. All the things that happened, I think, and both my colleagues can agree with me and to that and to what happened. So with COVID or no COVID, I think we need to really program an education system, and we really need to educate our children, and especially both male and girls, but also and especially a special focus on this case. As a day-to-day, when I'm working, I meet people and they always question the name of my organization. When I say we are Save a Girl, Save a Generation Kenya, I say, why not Save a Boy? Why not Save a Boy is always what they told me, because they don't understand yet why we need to empower girls. So I think it's our duty to make them understand why we need to empower girls, but that does not mean leaving the man behind. That means they should all come to the same level. I always say they have been here with all the privilege that they were given in life, and we have been here. So let's go here, and from here go up. How can we do that? That is the education the parents can give to their children, the education that the teachers can give in school, the education that the government in general can implement even in the civil servant and workers, because they are the first ones who will criticize a woman just because of being a woman, even if she's a colleague. So until we change that is deep-rooted in the social norms, a man's birth is celebrated. When a boy is born in my community, they dance. A goat is slaughtered. But when a girl is born, there is total silence. So we have to change that from the grassroots. That is the only way. I think we should not blame COVID. We should not blame, though they have part of the increment, the fault, and maybe of being close up with somebody. That is your what, no? Assaultor. And so that person that is who practices violence upon you, to be close upon him in a small space, obviously is very, very violent. But that is not the fault of COVID. That has been in our culture from the beginning, where women and men were never seen equally, not by politics, not economically, not religiously. Okay. So we have to change, I think, from many angles. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's. I think you put the finger into the wound, Asha, because it's funny how and what traditionally are considered male's values or masculine values like courage, self-security, I don't know, strength. It's funny how culturally sometimes this is distorted, because a real strong man would never hit a woman. A courageous person, doesn't need to use violence only to defend him or herself. Now, an intelligent man does not, does not have a woman close to him that is just like a doll or an object. He wants an intelligent woman. So I think there is a lot of cultural change to change this interpretation of, that what is weak and what is strong. Because the strong is not shouting louder. On the contrary, strong is not hitting. Courageous is not hitting a woman. So there is a lot still to do, definitely. Thank you very much. Now we have talked about the present and about the recent past, but let's now focus on the future. In this 2021, that we hope sees the end of the pandemic. So let's think about 2022 and further beyond. So what would you demand to 2021 and 2022 on women's rights, and which are the steps do you think would be required to achieve it? So where would you like to be on the 8th of March next year? Again, Ms. Mutavati.
Yes. Okay, just looking for the unmute button. So thank you. I think it's always important that with all the hindsight that we have, with the current experience that we have today, we should also look to the future and say, what does that future look like? So I think the question is very, very important. Otherwise, we'll keep talking about the same things year in and year out. So for me, it's a few things that I would like to see. The first one being, I think, as you know, at UN Women and working with different member states, civil society organizations, development partners, private sector, we are now championing this movement called the Generation Equality Forum, which will be launched formally in Mexico 29 to 31 of March, and then followed up by heads of states coming together in Paris in June of this year. So 3 things to take away from that, from the Generation Equality movement is, 1, we have to quicken the pace of change. So while we know that, change does take time, we think for gender equality is taking extraordinarily too long, because they are saying at the pace that we are going, to address all of the issues that have been said here by my fellow panelists, that would need 100 years plus to achieve equality. So we are asking ourselves, but do we have 100 years to wait to achieve this equality that our member states, our governments have promised us? No, we don't have those 100 years. We need, and we are demanding equality now. So that is one of the key messages under the Generation Equality, that we have to experience equality in our generation now. And then 2 is also to push our governments to say, you have made these commitments. Now we need to see concrete results and concrete action taken, including financing to achieve those results, right? So if these are issues are important, where is the funding for them? Where is the financing? So we need to see concrete action, results, and financing being put in place to achieve all of the things that my fellow panelists here have said, because that is the future we want, and we want to achieve that now and not in some later 100 years to come from now. And then thirdly is the issue of bringing young people on board. So the intergenerational discussion and dialogue. So we have generations and generations of women who fought so hard for us to be where we are today. So many things that we couldn't do, now they are available. Now I can walk into a bank and open an account and I don't need a male guardian. Now I can go to school and not be pulled out to be married. Well, for some of us, but for others, it's still a pipe dream for some young women right now. And so many things that the other older generation fought for. So now the current generation, of young people. Where are they in all of these conversations? They have to be available to take on the baton and run with it so that they can continue the fight for gender equality, and that it doesn't die with the older generation of Beijing, Nairobi before them, and so on. So that is the Generation Equality movement and forum that I thought I should share, which spells out the vision for us, but also the agency, the importance of intergenerational dialogue, and the importance of putting the finances where it matters the most. So allow me, as I'm concluding, Your Excellency, to just talk about the whole issue of COVID and the opportunities. Yes, we have been drawn back, but there is also opportunity to spring back and spring with energy and spring with more equality in focus and recover better. So we've seen all of the damage that COVID-19 has done, but we've also been opened our minds in terms of the gaps that actually exist. So now it will be the highest of foolishness to think we can just go back to where we were pre-COVID. We need to then see what is it, those things that we should never allow to move us post-COVID. So the issue of leadership, having women on the leadership tables and helping shape the decisions that are made. GBV, we can't continue to talk about GBV the same way we did before COVID. Now everyone's attention has been drawn to the issue of COVID-19. So now how do we then recover back better and more equal and ensure that, you know, we shun totally the practice of GBV, including the positive masculinity that you spoke about. So if you are stressed, go get help. The help cannot come by bashing your wife, for example. If you are if you are stressed because you don't have a job or because, you know, you are locked down or you can't have your drink, then get help. But GBV will not be part of that solution. So there is a lot of things that we need to do. Also supporting women businesses, women-owned businesses, because they were hardest hit. So in these stimulus packages that they are giving, where is the small business owner who does the hair, or who does, you know, a small scale cook restaurant, or who does all of this? Support should also look at those small businesses, SMEs, and then ensure that they also are allowed to recover, and not just look at the big, large corporations that have huge figures and so on. So I will stop here and say that the future looks brighter because we have learned a lot from COVID-19, and because we are all focused on this generation equality, that we must experience equality now and not 100 years down the line. So we think all of those things, if they come together, we will be looking at a much brighter future that is more just and equal for women and girls. Thank you, and over back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Mutavati. Lots of food for thought. Thank you for excellencing me, but you can call me Javier. Sorry, I forgot to tell at the beginning. I really appreciate your respect, but you know, my name is Javier. We can talk openly on that. So please, sorry, I should have told you this before. But yes,
thank you. And you please also call me Anna. Please feel free to call me Anna. Yes.
Thank you, Anna. So Anna, Anne, and Asha. Yes, I think some of the issues are being repeated, gender-based violence, but so many other very interesting things are coming up, and especially for the future. Definitely, things have to change, and they have to change now. Although human nature is what it is, and some countries go faster, some societies go faster, others go more slowly. But yes, we, especially for certain extreme things like FMG or gender-based violence, it is urgent to stop it now. So, Anne, how do you see the future? How do you see ourselves if we can have this conversation, hopefully face to face in a year and in the next years? What's your assessment?
Thank you very much. I think Anna has pointed out a number of things, but allow me to just add on some practical points. Being Kenyan and really to tie the Kenyan citizenry here to commitment. One, I think, is that we have seen during COVID the central role women have Not to negate and say men have not been important, but women have been at the front line as healthcare workers. They're the ones who are nursing, the ones who are well at home, they're the ones providing guidance to families. So there is that consensus that women have played a key role. As a country, if we are in that consensus, it's time to stop the talk and walk the walk. What do I mean by this? We have the opportunity now as we move towards 2022. And for me, a future Kenya of building back better involves certain things. One, that we need to see specific resourcing from the National Treasury to addressing gender issues. For instance, the issue of sanitary and dignity packs for girls, we need to keep this discussion to an end. We need to see specific resourcing, the same way we are resourcing large-scale infrastructure. Really providing dignity packs does not cost as much. So we need to see that kind of commitment. Secondly, we need to see commitment towards enhancing the space for women in leadership. We are now in a dispensation where we are going to discuss women leadership. I'm hoping as we talk about the constitutional changes that are pending and going into the election cycle, the gains that have been made towards representation of women will not be lost. If anything, we will have equal level playing field for women candidates because they have proven themselves, and we will have the opportunity to have more women in leadership because the more women we have, the more we are able to bring on board gender-based issues and female issues at the table. So I'm hoping that we can address that collectively, speak to the issue as we are seeing right now of violence, even political violence against women, that we can have clear, succinct action against perpetrators so that we are then having an election season that is free from violence, especially against women. Thirdly, we are looking at reforms in the judiciary. I'm hoping as a Kenyan, as a lawyer, without fear of contradiction, that for once we can have a female chief justice in office. I think time is ripe because for me, when we start having these specific actions, having faith in women occupying certain leadership positions, then we are sending a message that will resonate with the public that we have seen positive lessons out of COVID. We appreciate what women have done, and moving into the future, we are ready to entrust women with higher levels of representation in the country. So we are here to see the opportunity that we have seen. Technology remains to be an enabler. We are hoping that we can have more resourcing so that children in far-flung and marginalized areas are not really discriminated against or left out of the positive movement that technology has brought on board, but then they feel that they are part and parcel of the citizens, and you don't need to really think twice as a young Kenyan child because of where you come from. You coming from Marsabit or Wajir, you're having a different life as opposed to a child in Nairobi. So for me, the future is bright. Yes, COVID has had its sad undertones, but there's lots to learn from it. I'm hoping as a country, collectively, we can do that. As an institution, FIDA will remain committed, and we want to thank all the partners who have continued to believe in the mission and vision of FIDA. A lot more still needs to be done to ensure, as Anna has said, the intergenerational dialogue takes place. We don't talk of those who clamor for women changes as a past tense, but we have more and more emerging young leaders, all the way to those in primary school, girls and boys collectively, who believe in gender equality because that makes Kenya.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This is a lot of ideas. I've been taking notes because it's so interesting. Thank you, Anne. Asha, how do you see the future?
Well, I would like to see it as bright as Anna. I would like to be so positive. I'm somebody who believes that nothing is impossible. But I think, yes, if we work towards it, it will not be difficult to achieve. You see, but we need the government, we need the donors, we need the international organizations, and to be able to make this possible. See, we can always talk of a bright future, but if there is not that support, then I think it's going to be completely impossible. And so they should put that on the table. The future, let's say, of our organization, we want to, we are hoping to start early this year and then continue next year trainings with the police of the 5 counties that we are working with right now. They have to understand what we are doing apart from that, and what is their what is their duty, let's say, because there is this problem and that happens in Kenya and maybe other countries, but the abuse of power. The abuse of power, anybody in power, a minimum power, let's say from the security of a gate, when you're going to see, let's say, I'm just giving an example, Anne, but let's say you're going to FIDA's office and the security at the gate just chases you away, no? So they have to understand that the abusing of power is also violence towards that person, that victim, or that survivor of gender-based violence. So if the police do not understand, the doctors do not understand, the nurses do not understand, the teachers do not understand, then we are not doing absolutely nothing. So we have to start and working with all those civil servants, people in power. I was being told about a case, and that has been going on for a long time. Nurses, midwives, who hit the women who are going to give birth in public hospitals, or insult them, like insulting horrible words, like you did this, you opened, so you should be able to take it out. These are violence. These are violence that are never mentioned also. So all those departments need to be educated, and I think the government should collaborate in these trainings for these people who are giving a service. It's very important for them to get their training. And then later we take that education also to the schools. We take that education. I'm happy to know there are so many young people who are looking for equality, but they will find a wall if there's no help from the government, if there's no help from the elders, if we don't work from the grassroots, we don't work from the civil servants, we don't work from all the aspects. See, my mom understands that it's bad to beat a woman, but she understands it's bad to beat her too hard. See, if he beats a little bit, it's okay, because women have to be disciplined. See, so if even those people, elder people, women, mothers, religious leaders, all those people, I think they need to be. And for me, I'm not seeing it so bright if this will not be made possible. And I don't think in 2022 we have any solution. But I think if we start it, we can hope to have, and we can hope to reach somewhere.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're about to finish. First of all, I would like to thank you warmly for participation. I think for your participation, I think it has been an incredible opportunity of exchanging views. I could be here for another 2 hours, deepening in what you do and what your opinions are. I've been taking notes. We'll try to summarize or my conclusions, my very personal conclusions. First of all, there is a very interesting representation of multilateralism, of NGOs based more in the legal area and in the gender, the fight of gender-based violence. They're all interconnected. Those of you who are watching or listening, please, when you want to put your money where your thinking is, think about these three organizations. For the governments, for diplomats, official representatives, I think it's been very enlightening of what all of you do, but also for individuals who want to participate. So it's three different areas and three different projects that intertwine among themselves. Now, I would highlight the importance of the commitment of the governments, not only in their laws and speeches and publicity campaigns and propaganda, that is very good, but also real commitment with resources, financing, trying to help change things and empower women. So political will. Now, there is also an individual commitment. We're not going to change if we don't change ourselves. We had to start to see things in a much more open way. It is not true that things don't change. I remember when I was a young man, many people said in Spain, oh, Spain will be always a male chauvinist country, democracy, because we lived under a dictatorship. Democracy is impossible. We're not done for that. See what Spain has achieved. Now is a government with more women in the world. And the situation of women has changed dramatically in Spain. So it can happen anywhere. I don't try to set ourselves as an example. There are many other countries that have a lot to teach, Kenya among those. But anyway, thank you very much for your participation. Let's hope the next year on 8th of March, things have improved for women all over the world. And let's hope that, of course, this terrible pandemic is finished. Thank you. Asanteni sana. Muchísimas gracias.